A devastating fire had swept through Crestview, Georgia, just weeks before, claiming the lives of dozens and leaving the pediatric health center on Main Street as a beacon of hope amid the grief. Among the survivors was 6-year-old Lila, who had been pulled from the flames but left paralyzed from the waist down, her once vibrant spirit silenced by the trauma. Her father, James Thompson, a wealthy man now hollowed by loss, carried her through the hospital's revolving doors, his heart heavy with the weight of a town in mourning, and a daughter who might never walk again. On that cold morning, the air was sharp enough to sting fingertips and make breath visible. People rushed in and out of the pediatric health center, bundled in scarves, clutching coffee cups, moving fast like they could outrun their sorrow. But one person wasn't moving. He sat on a flattened cardboard box near the revolving doors, drawing quietly in a weather-beaten notebook. His name was Eli Carter, just 9 years old. His coat was a size too big, sleeves rolled up, and one of his boots had duct tape across the toe. A red knit beanie rested low on his forehead, barely, covering his ears. He didn't beg, didn't ask for help, just sat there watching people come and go. He was there most Saturdays. Some hospital staff had tried to shoo him off when he first started showing up, but after a while, they gave up. Eli didn't cause trouble. He smiled when spoken to, and when he wasn't sketching in his notebook, he was watching. Always watching. Most folks figured he had a parent inside, maybe a sibling, maybe he was just waiting for a ride. Nobody asked too many questions, not in a place like that. Across the street, parked by a fire hydrant, a dark silver SUV idled. The engine stayed on, but the driver didn't move. Inside sat James Thompson, a man in his late 40s with a sharp jawline and graying temples. His tie was loose, his collar wrinkled. He had money. You could see it in the way his car gleamed, even under the hospital's fluorescent lights. But he looked like a man running out of gas. In the back seat, a booster chair held his daughter, Lila, 6 years old. Brown, curls tucked behind one ear, legs tucked under a pink blanket. Her eyes were wide open, but she didn't say a word. The fire had changed everything. One minute, she was climbing trees and racing her cousins in the backyard. The next, she was paralyzed, sitting in silence. James opened the back door, scooped her up carefully, and carried her toward the entrance. He didn't notice Eli at first. Most people didn't, but Eli noticed him. He saw the way James held her like she might fall apart, the way her eyes stayed fixed on the sky, avoiding the building. Eli stared longer than usual. Then, just before they passed, he stood up and called out, "Sir, I can make your daughter walk again." James stopped mid-step, not because he was offended or confused, but because of how the words were said. Not like a sales pitch, not like a joke, just soft, clear, and serious, like Eli believed it completely. James turned, eyes narrowed. "What did you just say?" Eli didn't flinch. He stepped forward, tucking his notebook under his arm. "I said I can help her walk again." James stared at him. His arms tightened around Lila. "That's not funny, kid." "I wasn't joking." Eli's voice didn't shake. There was no smile, just that same quiet tone, a grown-up kind of stillness in a kid's body. James looked down at Eli's clothes, his taped-up boot, the cracked lenses of the glasses hanging from the boy's shirt collar. This had to be some weird coincidence, maybe even a scam. He turned and walked inside without another word. But inside, he couldn't stop thinking about it, the way the kid said it. Not with hope, not with doubt, but like it was a fact. Something about that voice stayed stuck in James's head, and it was going to keep pulling at him until he came back. James tried to forget about the kid. For the next few hours, he sat through Lila's appointments, nodding through updates from therapists, neurologists, and specialists, all of them using the same phrases they always did. Managing expectations, long road ahead, miracles take time. He'd heard it all, but Eli's words kept repeating in his mind like a stubborn itch. "I can make your daughter walk again." By early afternoon, James and Lila stepped out of the building. The sun had broken through the clouds, but the cold was still sharp. He walked toward the car, cradling Lila as usual, when he noticed Eli again, still there. Same box, same notebook. Except this time he was looking right at James like he knew he'd come back. James hesitated. He glanced at Lila. Her head rested on his shoulder, eyes closed. Her body was light, too light for a kid her age. He turned. You again, he muttered, walking over. Why would you say something like that? You think this is funny? Eli shook his head slowly. No, sir. You don't even know her, James snapped, lowering Lila gently into the back seat. You don't know what she's been through. You don't know what we've been through. Eli didn't back down. I don't have to know her to help. James straightened up. You're what, 9? Almost 10, exactly. You're a little boy sitting outside a hospital with duct tape on your shoes. What could you possibly know about helping someone like my daughter? Eli looked down, his fingers tracing the edge of his notebook. My mama used to help people walk again, he said quietly. She was a physical therapist. She taught me stuff. She said the body remembers things, even when it forgets for a while. James stared at him, the skepticism hardening in his chest. So what? You watched her do some stretches and now you think you're a doctor? I watched her help a man walk after being in a chair for 5 years, Eli said, eyes lifting. She didn't have machines or nurses, just her hands, her patience, and faith. James opened his mouth to speak, then stopped. He glanced around. A nurse passed by, giving Eli a small wave. A janitor from the hospital nodded in the boy's direction. They all seemed to know him. I'm not giving you money, James said. I didn't ask for money. Then what do you want? Eli took a deep breath and stepped forward. Just 1 hour. Let me show you. James looked back at Lila, who had now opened her eyes and was watching both of them quietly. He sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose. I should walk away right now. Eli didn't move. I should call security, James added. Still, the boy stayed silent. James finally huffed. Fine. You want to waste your time, kid? Meet us at Oak Ridge Park tomorrow noon. Don't be late. Eli nodded once. I'll be there. James climbed into the SUV, started the engine, and pulled off without looking back. But in the rearview mirror, Eli was still standing there, hands at his sides, face unreadable. Back at home after dinner, James sat in his home office. Papers were spread across his desk. None of them made sense. He kept thinking about the way Eli stood there like he knew something. Lila poked her head into the room. Daddy? She asked. He turned. Yeah, baby. Who was that boy? James paused. Just somebody we met outside the hospital. He looked like he believed it, she said. Believed what? That I could walk. He stared at her, lips parting slightly. She smiled just barely, and walked her fingers across the armrest of her wheelchair like they were legs. But James wasn't smiling, because for the first time in a long time, something inside him didn't feel numb. It felt dangerous, like hope. Oak Ridge Park was the kind of place most people passed by without a second glance. A cracked basketball court, a few swings with chains that squeaked, and a patch of grass that tried to be a soccer field. On Sundays, it was usually empty, especially around noon. But that day Eli was already there, sitting on the bench closest to the big oak tree. He wore the same oversized jacket, but his notebook was tucked away. Instead, he had a small gym bag at his feet and a folded towel on the bench beside him. At 12:07, James's SUV pulled up. He didn't say anything at first, just got Lila out, set her gently in her wheelchair, and wheeled her over to where Eli sat. He didn't make eye contact. His arms were crossed tight like he was already regretting being there. Eli stood up when they arrived. Hi again, he said politely. James gave a stiff nod. Lila waved shyly. Eli smiled at her. Hi, Lila. Her eyes lit up a little. Hi. James raised an eyebrow. How do you know her name? You said it yesterday, Eli replied. I remember stuff. James didn't respond. He just gestured at the towel. So what now? Magic carpet ride? Eli ignored the jab. No, sir. Just the basics. He opened his bag and pulled out a pair of socks, a tennis ball, a small jar of cocoa butter, and a plastic container filled with what looked like warm rice wrapped in cloth. James squinted. What is all that stuff my mom used? Eli answered. The rice is for heat, helps loosen tight muscles. The ball is for pressure points. James folded his arms again. Eli turned to Lila. If it's okay, can I work with your legs for a little while? Nothing hurts, I promise. And if anything feels weird, just say stop, okay? Lila looked up at her dad. He sighed. You can try. Just be careful. Eli knelt down beside her chair. He gently unwrapped the blanket from her legs and placed the warm cloth rice pack over her thighs. Lila flinched slightly. Too hot? He asked. She shook her head. It feels good. Eli nodded and waited. After a few minutes, he began to gently move her legs, not yanking, not forcing, just small rotations side to side, up and down. James watched closely, ready to jump in if something went wrong. But nothing did. You ever do this before? He asked, suspicious. Eli didn't look up. My mama used to take me to shelters after school. She helped veterans, folks who couldn't afford therapy. Said, everybody deserves to feel human again. I used to carry her bag. James raised an eyebrow. And she taught you this stuff? Yeah, said the body don't always need fancy, just attention. He tapped lightly on Lila's knee with his knuckle. You feel that? No, she whispered. Eli nodded again, unfazed. That's okay. I'll keep asking. He kept talking to her while working, asking about her favorite colors, her favorite food, what shows she liked to watch. At first, her answers were short, but then she started asking him questions. Do you live around here? Kind of. Do you go to school? I used to. Why not anymore? Eli hesitated. My mom got sick, then she passed. Been trying to figure things out since. Lila looked down. I'm sorry. Eli gave her a small smile. Thanks. James's posture softened slightly, but he didn't speak. After about 30 minutes, Eli gently tapped her ankle again. You feel that? Lila blinked. A little, like pressure. Eli looked up at James. That's good. James squinted. She sometimes says that during her regular sessions. Yeah, Eli replied, but those sessions are inside. A room full of machines. Sometimes kids get scared of machines, they tighten up. But here, he gestured to the open park. There's air, trees. Feels different. James didn't say anything, but he was definitely listening now. Eli helped. Lila stretched both legs, then gave her some simple movements to try with her toes, just wiggling. She tried. Nothing obvious happened, but she didn't look discouraged. I'll show you again next week, Eli said, standing up. It takes time, but your muscles, he pointed to her thighs, they still remember how to be used. Lila smiled bigger, this time. Okay. James cleared his throat. We're not promising anything, he said quickly. Eli nodded. I'm not either. I'm just trying. James stared at him for a long second. Then, without warning, he reached into his coat pocket, pulled out a folded bill, and held it out. Eli stepped back. No, sir, I don't want your money. James looked surprised. Then why are you doing this? Eli shrugged. Because your daughter smiled. James looked down at Lila. She was still smiling. But he didn't understand how a boy who had lost everything could give so much to a girl he barely knew. The following Sunday was warmer, but Eli still wore his jacket, not because he needed it, but because it made him feel like his mom was close. She used to call it his helper's coat, said every good healer needed something that reminded them why they care. He was already at Oak Ridge Park again by 11:45. Towel laid out, supplies lined up, and a bottle of water sitting beside him. A few kids played basketball on the court nearby, and someone's dog barked in the distance. At exactly noon, James's SUV rolled up. Lila was grinning before the car even stopped. Eli waved at her. Hi, Lila. Hi, she chirped, her curls bouncing as James helped her into the wheelchair. James looked tired again, but different this time, less weighed down. He gave Eli a small nod. No words, but it was more than last week. Eli got to work. Same setup. Same warm cloth pack, but this time something had shifted. Lila was trying now. "Can you press your heel into the ground?" Eli asked gently. She closed her eyes, concentrating. Nothing happened. "It's okay," he said. "Sometimes it takes your brain a while to find the right path. It's like trying to walk through a crowd. You just got to push through." James stood behind them, arms crossed again, but this time more to keep warm than to wall himself off. "Why do you do all this?" he asked suddenly. Eli glanced up. "Because I remember what it felt like when my mom used to help people. She made them feel like they mattered. I want to do that too." James nodded slowly. "You ever think about doing something else?" "Sometimes," Eli said, "but this feels right." James looked at Lila. She was tapping her toes barely, but they moved. For the first time, he didn't speak. He just watched. The next few weekends, they kept coming. Same time, same place. Eli taught Lila how to use rubber bands to strengthen her ankles. He rolled tennis balls under her feet to help her brain remember where they were. He showed James how to massage pressure points behind her knees and explained how each nerve had a job to do even when it went quiet. And then came the bad day. It was the fourth Sunday. Eli showed up like always. But when the SUV pulled up, Lila wasn't smiling. Her eyes were red. James looked angry. "She doesn't want to do it today," he said sharply as he lifted her into the chair. Lila refused to look at either of them. Eli approached slowly. "What happened?" Lila crossed her arms. "I tried to move my legs this morning and nothing happened. Nothing. I'm tired of trying. It's pointless." James looked away, jaw tight. "She's been frustrated all weekend." Eli nodded. He knelt beside her again. "You think I never get tired?" She didn't answer. "You think I didn't sit in a shelter and cry when my mom couldn't afford medicine and I had to just sit there and watch?" Her eyes shifted toward him. "You're allowed to be mad. I'm mad. Sometimes too. But if you stop now, the part of you that wants to walk might stop trying too." She stared at the ground. "I don't want you to give up," he said softly. "Because I haven't." Silence. Then Lila whispered, "I'm scared." James turned. That was the first time she'd said that out loud. Eli leaned in closer. "I am too, but scared don't mean stop. It just means you're close to something big." Lila wiped her face. "Okay, let's try again." And they did. Eli guided her through the motions gently with less talking this time, just presence, patience. James stepped in more too, helping her shift weight, encouraging every small twitch. After 30 minutes, Lila moved her right foot, not a toe, her whole foot. It slid forward, slow and stiff, but it moved. James knelt down beside her, blinking like he wasn't sure he'd seen it right. "Do it again," he said. She did. Eli smiled, but didn't say anything. He just sat back and watched. Later that night, James stood outside his house on Hilltop Lane, staring at the moon. He'd stopped asking himself who Eli really was. The question didn't matter anymore. Inside, Lila was giggling, retelling the footslide moment to her aunt on speakerphone. For the first time in 6 months, their house didn't feel like a hospital room. It felt like home again. But something inside James had started to shift. Not just his daughter's legs, but the weight in his own chest, the guilt, the pride, the wall he'd built between himself and the world. It was cracking. Monday afternoon, James sat in his office staring at an untouched contract. His phone buzzed every few minutes, emails, calls, client updates, but none of it felt urgent anymore. What kept looping in his mind was that moment in the park, Lila's foot sliding forward like it belonged to her again. He'd seen it with his own eyes. And the person who made it happen was a 9-year-old with taped-up boots and no last name he'd ever heard before. He opened a new browser tab and typed Eli Carter Crestview. Nothing came up except a few scattered results. He clicked through old local newsletters and school databases, a few mentions of Eli and his mother, Marie Carter, at a community clinic. No address, no recent info. He shut the laptop and leaned back. This kid was a ghost, except he wasn't. By Saturday, they were back at Oak Ridge Park, but things felt different now. James brought an extra mat and a fold-out chair. He handed Eli a sandwich when they arrived, didn't say anything about it, just placed it beside his gym bag. Eli gave a small thanks and tucked it away for later. "Ready, Lila?" he asked. She gave a big thumbs up. "Let's do it." They got into the routine heat packs, stretches, toe flexes. Today, James joined in fully. He sat cross-legged on the grass, doing each motion Eli explained, even messed it up once. "You're bending the wrong way," Eli said with a grin. James gave him a side eye. "I haven't stretched since college." They laughed, even Lila. About 20 minutes in, Eli leaned forward. "All right, Lila, let's try something different." He unfolded a belt from his bag and placed it under her knees, showing James how to hold each end. "She's going to try to lift both knees now, just a little. We help balance her. She controls the movement." James blinked. "You sure?" Eli nodded. "She's ready." They gave her a few seconds. Her brow tightened, eyes narrowed. She grunted softly, and then her knees lifted slightly, barely an inch, but they lifted. James looked at her, stunned. "You did that?" She smiled. "I did it." He swallowed hard. "You really did it." Eli nodded slowly, eyes on the belt. "See, the body remembers. You just have to be patient enough to let it talk." James looked at him. "You're something else, kid." Eli didn't respond. He just started gently guiding Lila through the next stretch. After the session, as they packed up, James crouched beside Eli. "Where do you go after this?" Eli shrugged. "Around," James lowered his voice. "You got a place to sleep?" Eli hesitated, then said, "Sometimes." James exhaled slowly, rubbing the back of his neck. "You ever think about coming to stay with us for a while?" Eli's eyes widened. "You serious?" "I got a guest room. You wouldn't be in the way." Eli looked down at his hands. "You sure your neighbors wouldn't mind a kid like me?" James gave a short laugh. "Man, after what you've done for my daughter, they'd better not say a word." Eli didn't answer right away, but James could see the wheels turning. "Oh." Next morning, Eli stood outside James's home, backpack slung over one shoulder, a rolled-up blanket tucked under his arm. James opened the door in sweatpants, a coffee mug in hand. "Right on time," he said. Lila rolled to the front hallway. "Eli," he smiled. "Hey, superstar." James stepped aside. Her brain was reaching out to her legs like it remembered the connection. One night, as James cleaned dishes, he paused and leaned on the counter. "Eli," he said over his shoulder, "you ever think about going back to school?" Eli, who was sketching at the kitchen table, glanced up. "Sometimes." James nodded. "You're smart. You could go far." Eli tilted his head. "I want to help people walk again, like my mama did." James turned to face him. "Then let's figure out how to get you there." Eli gave a small smile. "Okay." They didn't say much more that night. They didn't need to. But for the first time in years, the Thompson household wasn't full of silence. It was full of small noises that meant life: footsteps, laughter, scribbles, and healing. It started with a nurse from the pediatric health center. She was walking her dog through Oak Ridge Park one Sunday morning and spotted a familiar face, Lila. She hadn't seen her outside her wheelchair in months, let alone smiling, lifting her knees, moving her toes, and standing beside her was the same quiet kid who used to sit by the hospital doors every weekend. She didn't interrupt, just watched from a distance for a while. Then she went home and told her sister, who happened to work in patient services. A few days later, a physical therapist at the hospital mentioned to James, "Hey, someone told me Lila's improving. That true?" James nodded. "Yeah, thanks to someone we weren't expecting." Word spread fast. The next time they showed up to Oak Ridge Park, 2 other families were waiting at the bench near the big oak tree. One had a boy who used a walker, the other a girl recovering from a stroke. Both parents had heard about the kid who helped the Thompson girl move her legs again. Eli looked at James. James looked right back at him. "You don't have to," he said quietly. Eli adjusted the strap on his bag. "I want to." He gave up his usual time with Lila that day to work with the 2 new kids. He showed their parents how to use the same towel stretches, how to warm the rice packs just right, how to encourage without pushing too hard. And he talked to the kids, not at them. "You're not broken," he told one of them. "You're just learning a different way to be strong." Lila watched everything from her wheelchair, her hands folded in her lap. She didn't complain once. Later that afternoon on the drive home, she said, "I like watching him help people." James glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "Yeah, it makes me feel like I'm part of something good." He smiled. By the next weekend, 5 families showed up. The week after that, it was 11. A local pastor brought folding chairs. A nearby diner started dropping off bagels and coffee. Somebody printed flyers that read, "Free movement classes, Sundays at noon, Oak Ridge Park." They didn't mention Eli's name, but everyone knew who it was. A local reporter showed up with a camera and a notepad. James pulled Eli aside. "You okay with this?" Eli looked around at the families, at the kids moving their limbs, at Lila laughing with a girl on a walker. He nodded. "As long as it's not about me, it's about them." The reporter wrote her piece. It ran on the second page of the Crestview Sunday Post under the headline, "9-year-old with a gift helps dozens heal in a city park." They didn't share his full name. Eli asked them not to, but people found out anyway. A local doctor offered to mentor him. A nonprofit asked if they could fund some equipment. Someone else offered free tutoring. For the first time since his mother passed, people didn't just look at Eli, they saw him. But Eli never bragged. He still laid out the towel the same way. Every Sunday, still used the same duct-taped boots, still checked in with Lila first before helping anyone else. But now the park that once echoed with silence and sore bodies had become a place filled with movement, and a boy who had no home had become the heart of something bigger than himself. It had been 9 Sundays. 9 Sundays of towels laid on grass, of Lila's knees lifting higher, of small victories shared with strangers who'd become something closer to family. But this Sunday was different. Eli could feel it before they even pulled up to the park. The air was warmer, the trees swayed a little slower. Even Lila was quieter in the back seat, focused, almost like she was preparing for something big. When they arrived, a small crowd had already formed. Nothing loud or flashy, just families. Setting up folding chairs, therapists kneeling in front of kids, parents with hopeful eyes, and right in the middle of it all was that same worn-out bench under the oak tree. Eli didn't say anything at first, just unpacked his bag, rolled out the towel, and gave Lila a look. "You ready?" She nodded, no smile, just that look again, serious, determined. James wheeled her to the center of the mat. Eli knelt in front of her. "Same as before," he said softly. "We help you stand. You do the rest." James moved behind her and placed his hands under her arms. Eli took her legs, guiding them gently into place. "Okay," Eli whispered. "On 3. She closed her eyes. 1, 2, 3. James lifted. Eli steadied her knees, and then she stood. Her legs trembled, her arms shook, but she was up on her own 2 feet. The crowd fell silent. Some kids gasped. One mother clapped a hand over her mouth. Lila opened her eyes slowly and smiled. "I'm standing." Eli blinked back something in his eyes. "Yeah, you are." James froze for a second, like he couldn't breathe. Then he let go. She stayed up. He stepped back, shaking. She's doing it." Eli stepped back too, just a little. "She's been doing it." Lila took one shaky step, then another, and then, because she was 6 and brave and didn't know how to be afraid, she took a 3rd step, all on her own, before falling into her father's arms. He caught her, laughing, crying, his hands trembling, as he held her. "You did it," he whispered. "You really did it." Lila turned to Eli. "You said I would." He gave her a small grin. "I said we'd try." That afternoon, nobody left the park in a hurry. People stayed, talked, hugged. Some prayed. Eli sat back on the bench and watched it all. He didn't say much. He never did. Later that night, James stood in the kitchen while Eli poured cereal in a bowl. "You know, you changed everything," he said. Eli didn't look up. "I did." James walked over and placed a hand on the boy's shoulder. "My daughter walked today, and not because of a hospital or a doctor or a miracle drug. She walked because a kid with nothing decided to show up again and again, even when nobody asked him to." Eli nodded. "That's what my mom would have done." James's throat tightened. "I wish she could have seen this." "She did," Eli said softly. "I think she sees everything." James wiped his eyes. "Eli," he said quietly, "you're going to change a lot of lives." Eli looked up at him. "I already am." There are people in this world who might not have fancy degrees, shiny resumes, or a perfect past, but they carry something far more valuable: heart, grit, and a reason to keep showing up. Sometimes the most broken people are the ones holding the tools to help others heal. If Eli and Lila's story touched your heart, please show your support. Subscribe to our channel to join a community that believes in hope, healing, and the power of showing up. Like this video to spread their inspiring journey to others who need a spark of courage. And comment below, share your thoughts, your own stories, or just a word of encouragement for kids like Eli and Lila. Your engagement helps us keep these stories alive and reminds everyone that they matter. Let's make a difference together.